I refused the bet to kiss the cat Admiral. She said, yes, sank her fangs in, and now I'm hers forever. Elias Rourke stood on the polished observation deck of the Felonid Armada's central command station, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. The fleet stretched across the void like silver threads, massive ships lined up in precise patterns that no human mind could naturally calculate without intense computation. Yet somehow, the Felonid admirals had done it with instinct. Their ships were alive with quiet hums of energy, each one reacting instantly to commands, forming shapes and formations that were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Elias had seen advanced fleets before, but none like this. None so intimidating. At the center of it all, towering above the rest in the command circle, stood Admiral Sakura. She was not human, and she made no attempt to hide it. Her ears were pointed and moved independently, picking up every tiny sound in the room. Her golden eyes reflected light in an almost predatory way, scanning everyone who dared enter her presence. Her fur, striped and sleek, shone under the artificial lights, and every movement she made carried power and confidence. Elias felt a chill run down his spine, though he forced himself to remain calm. He had trained for moments like this. He had spent years preparing to face species who considered humans weak, fragile, and disposable. But nothing could truly prepare him for the reality of standing before the Cat Admiral. The room was filled with Felonid officers. Their fur patterns varied but all equally majestic, their tails coiling and uncoiling in controlled rhythms. They whispered among themselves, watching Elias with curiosity. Humans were rare in this part of space, rare enough that their presence was often treated like a spectacle. Elias knew this. Every eye in the room was on him, every whisper a reminder that he was an outsider. Then Sakura spoke. Her voice was smooth, deep, and carried an authority that seemed to press against the walls themselves. "You are the human who refused the traditional bet," she said. Her words were calm, almost polite, but every syllable held weight. "The one who dared to break protocol in front of the entire armada." Elias nodded slightly, refusing to bow or gesture more than necessary. Humans had been taught to respect other species, yes, but he had also been taught not to surrender unnecessarily. "I am he," he said. His voice carried across the chamber, steady and clear. "And I do not bend to arbitrary games." A ripple of surprise passed through the Felonid officers. Some hissed quietly under their breath, a sound that humans couldn't mimic exactly. Even Sakura's eyes widened just slightly. No human had ever refused the bet. None had ever dared. The bet, Elias knew, was more than a challenge. It was a test of submission, a symbolic gesture of yielding oneself to the Cat Admiral's authority. Usually, the human representatives would comply without hesitation, smiling and performing the ritual, hoping to curry favor. But Elias had spent too long watching history repeat itself. Time and again, humans had been underestimated, used as pawns, and discarded like broken tools. He refused to become another discarded pawn. Sakura studied him carefully, her eyes narrowing slightly. She had expected resistance, of course. Every human delegation had some measure of defiance, but not like this. This was a refusal that did not carry fear, nor did it carry arrogance. It carried something else entirely: clarity, determination. The quiet, unyielding force of a mind that understood what it meant to survive. "You do not understand what you are risking," she said finally. Her voice held a subtle edge now, a quiet warning. "The bet is not just a tradition, it is an ancient bond. To refuse it is to challenge not only me, but the entire armada." Elias met her gaze without flinching. "Then I am challenging it," he replied. "I am not here to perform games I do not understand. I am here to negotiate on behalf of humanity, not to surrender it to your customs." A tense silence followed. The Felonid officers exchanged glances, their tails flicking nervously. Elias could feel their disbelief, their quiet outrage. In their culture, no one refused the bet, ever. Yet here he stood, calm, confident, unmoving, and unbowed. Sakura leaned forward slightly, the light catching her fangs. It was the part of her appearance that humans often focused on first, mistaking it for menace alone. But Elias knew better. He had studied Felonid history, studied their rituals, and studied their biology. The fangs were a mark of authority, yes, but they were also part of the ritual that sealed bonds of obedience and loyalty. Most species submitted willingly. Few resisted. "I will not force you," Sakura said after a long pause. But understand this, in refusing you place yourself in a position few can survive. Are you certain of this path? I am certain, Elias said simply. His words were not loud, but they carried weight. Each syllable held the resolve of countless human ancestors who had faced impossible odds and survived. The weight of generations pressed against him, and he felt it like a mantle, guiding his stance, steadying his heartbeat. A slow, deliberate smile curved Sakura's lips. She was amused, truly deeply amused, not with cruelty but with recognition. Humans were strange, unpredictable, and yet sometimes astonishing. Elias had done something almost no other human had ever done. He had stared down the traditions of a species that considered themselves superior in every way and had not blinked. "You will not bow, and you will not kneel," she said. "And yet you stand in my presence without fear, curious, very curious indeed." Elias did not respond. Words were useless now. The fact that he remained unshaken said more than any argument could. He had learned long ago that some battles were not fought with words, but with presence, with the quiet strength of being unwilling to break. Sakura's tail twitched in amusement. She raised one clawed hand slowly, pointing it toward Elias. The gesture was not a command, but a declaration. "So be it," she said. "You refuse the bet. The ceremony will proceed as you have chosen against you. Let all who witness this know, this human stands alone yet unbroken." The room seemed to hold its breath. For the first time in Elias' life, he understood what it meant to feel the weight of an entire alien culture's scrutiny. Every officer, every ship, every whisper of movement in the Armada was focused on him, and yet he remained calm. His training had prepared him for this, but it had never prepared him for the sheer intensity of being watched not just as a representative of humanity, but as a symbol. "You have courage," Sakura said, tilting her head slightly. "But courage alone will not save you. The bond is ancient. It is not broken by mere words. Few survive it, and fewer still return to speak of it." Elias felt a shiver of tension, but he refused to show it. He had faced impossible odds before. He had survived ambushes, plagues, and hostile environments that should have killed him. He had learned that survival was not just about strength. It was about adaptability, wit, and the refusal to be predicted. "I do not seek survival," he said quietly. "I seek negotiation. I seek understanding. I will not be owned by fear." Sakura's eyes gleamed with a new interest. She stepped closer, each movement precise and deliberate like a predator circling something fascinating yet unfamiliar. "Bold words," she said. "Bold actions. We shall see if your mind can survive what your body might not." The tension in the room was electric. Every Felonid officer leaned slightly forward, ears twitching, tails coiling in anticipation. This had never happened before. A human had refused the bet, had spoken with clarity and defiance, and had not yet been destroyed for it. For the first time, there was uncertainty among the ranks. Elias took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. He was alone in this room, standing before the most powerful military mind in this sector of the galaxy. And yet, in some strange way, he felt alive. The fear that should have crushed him was present, yes, but it was tempered by focus, by awareness, by the knowledge that he had prepared for moments like this his entire life. Sakura circled him slowly, silent, her gaze never leaving his face. "Perhaps," she said finally, "humans are not as weak as history has led us to believe. Perhaps they can be more than they seem." Elias met her gaze, unwavering. "We already are," he said. Sakura stopped, standing close enough that Elias could see the faint shimmer of her fur in the artificial light. "We shall see," she said, and with a flick of her tail, she signaled the end of the immediate confrontation. The bet, though refused, would still proceed, but now it was a test of something far greater. Not mere obedience, but the strength of a human mind facing the unknown. As Elias was escorted to the holding chambers, he felt the eyes of the entire Armada on him. He did not know what awaited, but he knew one thing with certainty. Humans had never been predictable, and he would not start now. Somewhere deep inside him, a spark ignited. It was not fear nor defiance alone. It was recognition. This was the beginning of something far larger than a single bet, a single ceremony, or even a single species. This was humanity showing, for the first time in many years, that it could not be ignored. Elias sat in the observation chamber, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. The room was quiet, but the silence was heavy, like the weight of the entire Armada pressing down on him. Outside, he could see the massive ships of the Felonid fleet stretching across the void, their sleek hulls gleaming under the faint starlight. The patterns of the armada were like nothing humans had ever created, precise, deadly, and alive in a way that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. The chamber's doors opened silently, and Sakura entered. She moved with grace and power, every step measured, her tail swaying slowly behind her. Her eyes, golden and sharp, fixed on Ilia's. This time there was no amusement in her gaze. There was only calculation. "You have survived the first test," she said quietly, her voice low but carrying easily across the room. "The assembly expected you to falter, to kneel, or to flee, and yet here you are." Ilias remained seated, keeping his posture straight. "I have survived because I have nothing to give you," he said. "No fear, no submission, no lies, I am only human." Sakura paused, tilting her head slightly. "And yet humans are strange creatures," she said. "Fragile, yes, but resilient in ways that defy prediction. Perhaps there is more to you than the history books suggest." Ilias did not respond. He had learned long ago that words were often a trap. Actions mattered more, and the next actions would determine whether he survived the ritual that awaited him. She stepped closer, her fangs just visible under the faint light. It was a natural part of her, but it also carried a weight of history and authority. The Felonids had used this ritual for centuries. The bite was not merely symbolic. It was a biological imprint, a method of creating a bond that few species could withstand. Most humans would collapse under its effects, their nervous systems overwhelmed by the Felonids' unique genetic signal. Ilias, however, had been prepared. Sakura extended her hand, her claws gleaming. "The bond is not merely physical," she said. "It is mental, emotional, and biological. You will feel it in ways you cannot yet understand. Do not think to resist it. Very few succeed." Ilias leaned back slightly, steadying his breathing. "I will resist," he said quietly. "Not because I am brave, but because I must. Humanity does not bend easily. We survive." A small smile curved Sakura's lips. "We shall see," she said. She moved with a fluid motion, her hand reaching toward him. As she touched his shoulder, a sudden warmth spread through his body. It was not painful, but it was unlike anything Ilias had ever felt. It seemed to reach into his nerves, into his very bones, sending tiny shivers through him. "You feel the bond beginning," she said softly. "It is subtle at first. You may feel disoriented, unsure, but it will grow. It is designed to make you dependent, to make you loyal. Most species obey willingly. Most humans would not survive this stage." Ilias focused, steadying his mind. He had trained for neural interference before, had studied alien physiology, and had practiced resisting control methods. The warmth spread, but he controlled his response. He allowed it to pass through him without taking hold. His body reacted naturally, but his mind remained his own. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the fleet outside. Every Felonid present watched intently, their ears twitching, tails coiling in quiet anticipation. This was unprecedented. Humans had never resisted the bond. Few species had ever managed it. Ilias was already rewriting their expectations. Sakura withdrew her hand slightly, studying him. "You are not like the others," she said. "You are adaptive, clever. Dangerous in ways few understand. This is both remarkable and inconvenient." Ilias did not smile. "Danger is part of survival," he said. "Humanity has survived where others have failed because we adapt, we learn, and we never give up." The Admiral's tail flicked sharply, a sign of both irritation and interest. "Very well," she said. "If you survive the bond, it will not be by luck. You will face tests, mental tests, physical tests, and challenges to your very instincts. Each will try to bend you, to break your resolve. Only then will you prove whether humans are truly as resilient as they claim." Ilias' heart beat steadily. He had expected danger. He had expected tests. He had not expected to feel this respect. Not admiration, but a recognition that he was capable. It was a dangerous kind of recognition, one that meant he would be pushed further than any human had ever been. The first test began immediately. Sakura gestured toward a section of the chamber that shifted like a holographic projection, forming a simulation of a battlefield. Ships and soldiers appeared, moving with impossible speed and precision. The Felonid officers nodded and watched as Ilias was placed at the center of the simulation. "You will navigate this scenario," Sakura said. "Failure is not an option. The bond amplifies awareness and it tests instinct. Humans rarely survive this stage without breaking down. Ilias took a deep breath, centering himself. He had faced complex simulations before, but nothing on this scale. The battlefield shifted and changed around him, the ships reacting as if they had minds of their own. He relied on instinct, on quick analysis, on every skill he had honed over years of training. He gave commands, adjusted tactics, and moved with precision. The Felinids watched in stunned silence. A human had never adapted so quickly, had never manipulated their simulations with such unexpected creativity. The bond, which was supposed to dominate him, was instead being shaped by his human instincts. It fed on his mind, yes, but he used that energy to react faster, to think clearer. Sakura's eyes glimmered with fascination. She had expected chaos, fear, perhaps panic. Instead, she saw focus, intelligence, and resilience. Ilias had turned the ritual into a test of his own skill. Hours passed, though they felt like minutes. The simulations became increasingly complex, each one designed to push him further, to make him falter. Alien creatures, environmental hazards, sudden attacks, every challenge was meant to overwhelm him. Yet Ilias moved through each one with calm determination. By the end of the cycle, he was exhausted, but he had survived. The Felinid officers whispered among themselves, their disbelief evident. None had seen a human withstand even half of what Ilias had endured. Some began to doubt whether their understanding of humans had been complete. Sakura approached him again, her expression unreadable. "You have survived the first stage," she said. "Few species could manage this. Fewer still would have done so without faltering, yet you have done more than survive. You have adapted, you have dominated the scenario, and you have challenged the very nature of the bond." Ilias nodded, sweat beading on his forehead. "I do not seek to challenge you," he said. "I seek only to survive and to represent humanity. We do not surrender, we do not bend, we endure." A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Sakura's lips. "Perhaps humans are remarkable indeed," she said. "You are different from what I expected. Dangerous, yes, but not in the way most species are. You are unpredictable. That is troubling." Ilias felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. He had survived, but he knew the bond was far from over. The tests would continue, and the challenges would grow even more difficult. Yet for the first time, he felt a strange sense of confidence. He had faced what no human had before, and he had prevailed. The Admiral stepped back, her eyes never leaving him. "Rest now," she said. "The next stage will come soon, and it will test not only your mind and body, but your instincts, your very essence. Few can survive it, and fewer would dare try. You have chosen to face it. We shall see if you can endure what comes next." Ilias allowed himself a deep breath, letting the tension drain from his muscles. He had survived the first stage, and in doing so had proven something vital. Humanity was not weak. Humanity could endure. Humanity could adapt. And most importantly, humanity could survive where others would fail. He looked out the window at the Armada, feeling the magnitude of the challenge ahead. The stars stretched endlessly before him, but he did not feel small. He felt alive. And he knew with a certainty that no test could shake, that humans were not a species to be underestimated. For the first time, he understood something fundamental. The bond, the ritual, the Admiral herself, none of it could truly control him. Humanity had survived countless impossible odds, and Ilias would carry that legacy into every challenge, every test, every battle that lay ahead. And so, in the quiet of the observation chamber, amidst the vastness of space and the silent gaze of the Felinid Armada, Ilias prepared himself for the trials yet to come. He was not afraid. He was ready. And he would endure, no matter the cost. Ilias awoke in a chamber that smelled faintly of ozone and metal. The soft hum of the Felinid Armada surrounded him like a constant pulse, vibrating through the floor and walls. His muscles ached from the simulation yesterday, but it was more than physical exhaustion. His mind felt stretched, like a wire pulled too tight, still buzzing with the remnants of the challenges he had faced. Yet he felt no fear, only anticipation. He knew the next stage would be harder, and he welcomed it. Sakura entered without warning. Her presence was immediate, commanding, and silent. The way she moved reminded Ilias of a predator stalking its prey, but it was also precise, deliberate, and almost ceremonial. She did not speak at first, simply watching him with those golden eyes. There was something almost calculating in the way she assessed him, as if she were measuring not only his physical readiness but the core of his spirit. You have survived the first trial, she said finally, her voice smooth and low. Few have ever done so. Fewer still have done so without succumbing to fear, doubt, or instinct. You are extraordinary human. Elias met her gaze steadily. I did what was necessary, he said. I adapt, I endure. That is how humans survive. A flicker of surprise passed through her eyes. Humans rarely spoke with such certainty in her presence. Most species were overwhelmed by the bond, faltering before the first stage even completed. Elias had not only endured, but he had turned the bond's energy into a weapon of clarity and focus. It had shifted something within the Felonid command, and she recognized that now. You will now face the full bond, she said, stepping closer. It is not merely a test of mind or body. It will seek to shape you, to command you, to make you bend. Most species fail, some die. Elias did not flinch. I will not bend, he said simply. I will endure and I will learn. Hera's tail flicked sharply. We shall see, she said. Do not mistake survival for victory. The bond is older than any human civilization. It will test everything you are. She moved closer, her claws glowing faintly with a bioenergy that humans could barely perceive. When her fangs sank lightly into his shoulder, Elias felt a surge of sensations unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was not pain, exactly, but a deep, invasive signal that seemed to burrow into his nerves, into his very thought processes. Most humans would have collapsed almost instantly. Elias clenched his teeth and focused. The sensation was overwhelming at first. It pushed against him, seeking to claim his thoughts, his instincts, his very will. Elias' mind raced to counteract it, using every mental discipline he had trained for over years. Breathing slowly, focusing on each nerve, each synapse, he allowed the bond to pass through him without surrendering to it. Hours seemed to stretch into days as the bond worked its subtle influence. It whispered at the edges of his consciousness, offering control in exchange for compliance. It played on instinct, on fear, on human emotion, yet Elias did not yield. He adapted, using the energy of the bond to heighten his awareness, to sharpen his reflexes, to predict the movements of his invisible opponent. Sakura observed silently, her golden eyes tracking every twitch of his muscles, every shift in his breathing. She had expected resistance, yes, but not this. Most species could not channel the bond, they were consumed by it. Elias, however, seemed to thrive under its pressure. His movements became precise, his mind clearer. The bond, instead of dominating him, was being redirected by his own instincts. You are unusual, Sakura said finally. Not weak, not fragile, not compliant. You bend, but not to us. You bend to yourself. Elias did not respond, focusing instead on controlling the signal that coursed through him. The bond continued to probe, seeking cracks, seeking doubt. He closed his eyes briefly, centering himself. He visualized every failure humanity had endured, every time humans had been underestimated, every time they had faced impossible odds and survived. He drew strength from it, letting it flow into his mind and body. The bond shifted, sensing the resistance. It tried new tactics, probing deeper into emotion and instinct. Fear, frustration, exhaustion, it tugged at each one, but Elias met them with determination. He did not fight blindly. He learned how the bond reacted, how it sought to influence him, and he began to anticipate its moves. Hours passed in a blur of mental resistance and instinctive adaptation. The bond's energy coursed through him, but instead of overwhelming him, it became a source of clarity. Elias could feel the subtle signals of the Felonid network, the flow of commands across the fleet, the positions of ships, the patterns of energy distribution. The bond had opened a doorway to understanding, and he stepped through it carefully, learning faster than even the Admiral anticipated. Sakura's tail flicked with irritation and fascination. You are stronger than I expected, she said. Stronger than most species. It is troubling. Your mind resists, adapts, and even thrives under influence. Perhaps, humans are not to be underestimated. Elias finally opened his eyes, feeling a strange calm. He had survived the full intensity of the bond. The Felonid method of domination, the ancient ritual, had been neutralized by human adaptability. He was exhausted, yes, but he was alive, aware, and more capable than before. The chamber fell silent as Sakura studied him. Few would have survived even a fraction of this stage, she said. You have endured, and yet this is only the beginning. The bond has many layers, each one older and more complex than the last. To endure fully, you must face not only the physical and mental challenges, but the instinctual, the primal, the essence of what it means to submit. Few have ever done so and returned unchanged. Elias nodded. I am ready, he said. I do not seek to submit. I seek to survive, to learn, and to endure. Sakura's eyes gleamed with a mixture of admiration and caution. She had underestimated humanity, and now she understood that the unpredictability of humans was their greatest strength. The bond had been designed for domination, but in Elias it had found resistance, adaptation, and even clever exploitation. You are dangerous, she said quietly. Not in the way most species are. You are dangerous because you cannot be predicted, because you do not follow instinct in the way the bond expects. You turn its power against it, and in doing so, you survive. Elias allowed himself a small, controlled smile. He did not need her approval, but acknowledgement of capability was always welcome. Humans have survived worse, he said. We endure because we must, we adapt because we have no other choice, and we survive because we refuse to be controlled. Sakura tilted her head, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Indeed, perhaps there is more to your species than I once believed, but the next stage will test your limits even further. It will challenge every instinct, every assumption, every principle you hold. Most will fail. Some will die, few will endure as you have. Elias stood, feeling the strength in his legs, the clarity in his mind, and the readiness in his heart. He was not invincible, he was not immune to the trials ahead, but he was human, and humanity had never been weak. They had survived centuries of conflict, disease, and adversity. They had faced extinction and rebuilt from the ashes. And now, facing an alien bond meant to dominate and destroy, Elias carried that legacy forward. You will continue tomorrow, Sakura said, her voice both promise and warning. Rest now. Strength will be necessary, for the bond grows more powerful, more demanding, and more invasive. Only by mastering it will you survive. Elias watched as she left the chamber, the doors sliding shut silently behind her. The silence of the armada returned, vast and heavy, pressing down with its subtle hum. He allowed himself to breathe fully, letting the tension drain from his body. He knew the challenges ahead would test him in ways he could not yet imagine. But he also knew this. Humans did not give up. Humans did not yield. Humans adapted, endured, and survived against odds that would crush any other species. And Elias would embody that truth in every trial, every challenge, and every test that awaited him. He looked out at the stars beyond the window, letting their quiet light remind him of the vastness of the universe. Humanity had survived on countless worlds, faced threats that seemed insurmountable, and continued to thrive. Now, in the presence of one of the galaxy's most formidable species, Elias understood the scale of the challenge. Yet he also understood the truth of his own being. The bond might press, might influence, might test every fiber of his being, but it could never control his will. He was human, and humans did not submit. They endured, they adapted, and they survived. And with that knowledge, Elias closed his eyes, allowing the brief rest he could afford, preparing himself for the trials that awaited him the next day. For the bond was only beginning, and the real challenge, the one that would define his survival and perhaps change the felonid understanding of humanity forever, was about to unfold.